So now you know that you are no longer welcome in Japan. But if you are at the misfortune of having your trip already booked, how is this going to affect you and what can you do now? In my recent video, we learned that foreigners are becoming increasingly less welcome in Japan due to the rise of the far right and the increase of far right populism gaining incredible popularity throughout the nation. But now there are people in my comments wondering which foreigners are deemed okay and which foreigners are the ones that are going to be targeted. There's a common misconception that Japan's increase of anti-foreigner and anti-immigration sentiments is only geared and only affecting black people and those of darker skin tones. But you could not be more wrong. For example, within the last year alone, Joshua Thompson, a white British national that was born and raised in Japan, who by the way speaks fluent Japanese, was openly told foreigners not allowed when he was trying to rent a property. And this was despite having Japanese guarantors and literally having a permanent status in Japan. And again, white man who was fluent in Japanese. Another example would be a long-term white Irish expat who reported campaign signs laminating foreigners. This was directed towards all non-Japanese people, not just those of darker skin. He even said as an Irishman, he was wondering if he was being singled out. They say illegals, but it still stung. Now, obviously, let's not be silly. If you are a black person or someone with darker skin, you are more likely to be singled out and targeted, as reports have already shown this. But unfortunately for you and me, regardless of your skin tone, unless you are a Japanese native-born citizen, you are not exempt of being singled out and regarded as a foreigner. Now, this is not me saying not to visit the country, as it's a beautiful country that I'm sure we would all love to appreciate one day. But just like with America, I would be an idiot to feign ignorant and act as if there wasn't a heightened risk because of the rise of the far right within the nation of Japan right now. And mind you, with respect, Japan has always been kind of closed off to foreigners anyway. And so this increase of anti-foreigner sentiment only makes it all the more alarming for all of those who want to visit Japan anytime soon.
Do people in Japan dislike tourists?
I would say Japan is a very racist country. Not to generalize, it's too different from the world, you know, right? And a lot of people don't want to accept this difference. Especially Japanese people, I think they tend to protect their own space. So most critical is that you don't invade in this space that they're protecting. And that's the main irritation that tourists bring into Japan. I'm currently working as a tour guide in Osaka. I've been talking to a lot of local Japanese business owners, and a lot of them explain that it takes much more effort to serve a foreigner than a Japanese local that always knows the rules, right? So this is a big service cost that they have when it comes to restaurants as well.
What's an example of like rules that foreigners does not or cannot follow?
One is like food culture is very different, you know, like Japan often has this culture that if you order something, you gotta finish it up, you know. But if you go to a very local ramen shop, they sometimes punish you for not eating the whole ramen, right? So there's actually one ramen place in Osaka that you have to deposit 10,000 yen, so around $80 as a bill, and they'll hang it in the fridge until you finish up the whole thing, right? Eating the whole meal is a way to show respect. I find a lot of people from other countries that like cherry picking a little bit.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we need to talk about a viral TikTok that's been making waves. It claims that Japan no longer welcomes foreigners and is supposedly stopping tourism. Sound dramatic, right? Let's break this down.
Justin, you might want to have to consider going to Japan. Let me explain. A lot of people have been flooding Japan recently, and without knowing that there is a far-right movement happening in Japan against foreigners. And the far-right movement has already gained a lot of seats in government, already 14 from only 1 or 2 in a short period of time. And now those seats will definitely most likely be growing. A lot of reports are coming out of Japan from foreigners saying that they're not even allowed to go to certain shops, hotels, restaurants. There are signs in front of the door, and signs are saying no foreigners, no black people, no Chinese, no Koreans. Like they write it, you're not allowed in there. And the people have called the police, and the police have done absolutely nothing about it. So if you are going to Japan, be aware and make sure you plan yourself ahead of time. You can search it online. There are so many videos on TikTok. It's flooding the internet right now. It's absolutely crazy.
This is the reason why why black people and non-Japanese speakers do not like going to Japan. Because the sad fact is Japan is filled with racists. It's not just in the West. As you can see, a Japanese restaurant has put up this no vacancy sign in front of their restaurant in Japan. And as you can see, to any English speaker, it says no vacancy right on it. But if you look directly below it, you can see that there's a little red text. And once actually translated, the little red text says, if you can read this, you may come in. Meaning that if you can actually read the Japanese, then you're allowed in. But to all of the English speakers, is to directly deter them. But hold on, it gets worse. A Twitter user that I presume is Japanese replied to this and said, I like this because it doesn't necessarily turn away all foreigners, only obnoxious ones who don't speak the language. This is why I can't take people seriously whenever they act as if racism is solely an American issue. That is just so lambastically and objectifiably wrong. Deciding to turn people away off of the basis that they can't speak your language, you tell me what that sounds like. And by the way, automatically assuming and categorizing non-Japanese speakers is also pretty racist. Literally apply this to an English person in an English pub, literally turning away anyone that doesn't look like them or doesn't sound like them or doesn't speak the Queen's English. They are now exempt from stepping foot inside this restaurant. That's stupid.
I knew they were racist openly there, but I didn't know you could literally say no to foreigners. Absolutely, you can say no to foreigners in Japan and in many circumstances where the foreigners are just not protected at all. For example, when I turned 18, I tried to get my first apartment and I was denied over and over and over again because I was foreign. That was literally the only reason that I got denied so many times. It was because I was foreign and I didn't have a Japanese person to sign for me to say, yes, you're good to get this apartment. They were not beating around the bush either. They were saying, you can't get this because you are a gaijin or a foreigner. I've been denied entry into maybe 2 bars in my entire time there, but it still did happen. I also applied for jobs, and then when I went for the interview, they're like, sorry, we don't hire foreigners. All that being said, in the United States, I do feel that racism is worse, and this is my opinion, just based on my experiences. In Japan, racism is more like an inconvenience and kind of like a disrespectful thing, and it's really frustrating, but people are less likely to do things to adamantly hurt you in some way like they would be in the US. For example, in the United States, you could argue that there are people who are killed because of the color of their skin. It's a pretty easy argument to make. In Japan, doesn't happen. I mean, murders are super uncommon to begin with, but especially race-driven murders, I don't know that I've ever heard of one before. You could also argue that somebody who doesn't like a certain race of people, who calls the police and lies about what they're doing intentionally to get them in trouble, could also be a form of trying to get them killed or get them really hurt. All this being said, though, it's not really common in Japan. You can find no foreigners allowed bars and restaurants and a couple other places, but it's pretty rare. I don't actually know how many there are. Maybe there's a statistic somewhere. It may or may not be right, but in my experience, there's not really that many. And by and large, people might be more judgmental or curious rather than aggressively racist and really, really disliking you. That's mainly the older generation.
My recent post about Sanseito and not being that worried about them has brought a lot of critics, a lot of Japanese people in the comments saying that Japan should be for Japanese and foreigners need to respect this and that. Okay, if you kicked every single foreigner out of Japan, snapped your fingers and everybody was gone, myself and everyone else included. Heck, let's throw in mixed race, throw in everyone that's not pure Japanese, kick them all out, and repatriate every single Japanese person who's now living abroad. Sorry, Otani, you're going to have to come home. Bring them all back to Japan, right? What would happen? What would happen if that were to occur? The Japanese economy would collapse within minutes. Seconds. Not seconds, minutes. Within a day, okay? And I'm not exaggerating. Look at almost every single bank in Japan. Who's in their IT department that's running the whole show? Without the IT people in the back office making the banks work, the banks won't work. Insurance companies. I work with a company, MetLife. There's over 500 people in IT in MetLife, and more than half of them are foreigners. Most of those foreigners are Indian and Chinese, some Korean as well. Very few Americans, but just saying, if you got rid of every single one of those people, MetLife would shut down. Same thing with Indeed Japan, where almost 100% of the back office engineers are foreigners who speak no Japanese at all. None. Mercari, Rakuten, Amazon, all of the major life insurance companies, all of the major e-commerce companies, every single one of them would shut down within a day if they had no foreigners to run it. They could try to hire Japanese to replace them, and maybe over a couple of years, they might come close, but it would never run at the same level of performance. I don't know why that is, and you can speculate as to why that is, but I guarantee you that this would not be something they could replace within a month or two. it would absolutely devastate the Japanese economy. So stop talking about foreigners, how we're like a bother to the Japanese economy and we're a drag on the Japanese economy. We all earn wages, we all pay taxes. More than half of the money I make goes into the coffers, and guess what? That money is paying for somebody's grandma to get health care. Okay, I hope that money will be there for me when I'm 80 years old in Japan, which is probably going to happen. But, stop pretending like foreigners in Japan are some kind of burden. They're not. We're helping Japan. We're keeping the place running. Okay, I know a lot of us don't understand Japanese culture and don't, perhaps know every nuance of what rules, what side of the escalator to walk on, what Tokyo versus Osaka and things like that. But if you came to Canada, there's a lot of things that Japanese do in other countries that are way against the social norms of that country. And it's just part of life. Germans visiting the Czech Republic, Russians visiting Brazil. We don't always know every single nuance in the other countries. So stop pretending it's a unique problem for Japan. It's not.
日本の政治は日本人がやるんだ。多民族国家にするつもりはありません。ね、日本の政治は日本人がやります。いいですか？はい。もちろん外国の方に来てもらって一緒に働いてもらうのはいいでしょう。しかし日本の政治は日本人がやるんだ。だから皆さんね、ちゃんと選挙に行きましょうね。今どんどん外国の方増えてますからね、外国人参政権我々反対ですけど、でも与えるとかいうとこ出てます。ですからしっかりと日本人が政治に参加することが大事です。
So, if you see this clip like this on your feed, don't just take them as face value. Always ask who benefits from making you scared of foreigners, who profits when people blame outsiders instead of the system. That's the lens we need to use, because the real story isn't that Japan hates foreigners, it's that ordinary people everywhere are struggling under global capitalism, and the media loves to put us against each other instead of challenging the system. If you find this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think tourism should be capped to protect local community, or do we need a bigger conversation about wealth inequality and global capitalism? Let's talk about it.